I teach in the resiliency book that sometimes you have to allow your children to make mistakes so that they can learn the power of recovery and the power of victory after the fact. So what if you have a child who has saved up some money and wants to buy a particular pair of shoes, and you know that if he spends all of his money on those shoes, he will not have money to buy his brother a birthday gift next week, and he'll be embarrassed or shamed or saddened by that, or that he has another goal and he won't be able to meet it, but I want these shoes. Maybe you let him buy the shoes. And then you walk with him through the disappointment. You say, what could you have done differently?
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, in the summer of 1978, nearly 60% of teens were working or looking for work. That percentage has generally been on the decline ever since that point. It's seeing a steep drop off really after the year 2000. That's according to statistics from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. In 2017, just 35% of teens were working or looking for a job, compared to that previous stat of 60%. But since the pandemic, those numbers have been slowly climbing. In 2021, it was about 36.6% who were looking for a summer job. And now, according to Pew Analysis, we're really seeing that as of May 2024, a jobs report says about 38% of kids 16 to 19 were looking for a job. This is really beneficial for kids, according to some different surveys that have been done. One by Ops Loans showed that about 1,000 kids in 2023 aged 14 to 24, found that landing a job was really already helping them figure out kind of how to do a budget. Of those that responded, 63% had a job lined up for the summer, and they planned to make an average of about $4,000 by September and save 57% of it. That's over $2,000 of it, mainly looking for things like living expenses, tuition, travel, spending money, helping out families, and really other things that they would spend their money on. Dr. Kathy, I kind of see these facts play out in really real life for my kids this last summer. I watched them get jobs, and really jobs that I look at and say, you're making 3 times what I was making at your age. But inflation's a real thing, right? I've kind of stumbled, though, into this, seeing that my kids are now a little bit more concerned about where their money's going and how they're budgeting it. And they don't have money for ice cream every night of the week. They have it for one night of the week. It's just really interesting watching them budget manage this and, really set some of those things up. That happens, I think, because I've been blessed with a good relationship with our kids. And they've come to this place where they look at money and kind of see the value in it. But what about other things? How can I step in and really build solid relationships? And maybe for those of us who don't have those kind of relationships, how do we build good relationships to have what I would say are really important conversations like this with money?
I think when we're available, when our children are young, to their questions, even though they seem so unimportant and irrelevant, it changes children. When we present ourselves as being the ones who want to facilitate their understanding and want to spend time with them, then they'll come to us and they'll ask about, where do babies come from? And mommy, that cat had a lot of kittens. How many babies can a mommy have? I mean, we're available to the questions. And when we prove to them from the get-go on a variety of topics that we are willing to do the research with them and willing to answer their questions, or willing to say, you don't need to know that yet, then they'll be interested in what we have to say about money as well. And I would also think that one of my recommendations would be that we talk out loud about money. If you take your children out to a restaurant and 3 of them want dessert, but you just spent your restaurant budget for the month, you don't just say, no, not tonight. You say, hey, your mom and I are really careful with our money because we want to be able to provide what's necessary, not just always what is fun. And we just spent a month of our restaurant budget on the meal. And so there is no money for the dessert. Now at home, that we have grandma's cookies, but we're not spending money here. So what if we talked out loud more and explained what we do? Why did somebody drop a gym fee? I noticed I wasn't going to the gym enough. It was 48, bucks a month. And that was just a waste of money. I've got a backyard and I've got a park nearby and I'm just going to run for free. Do we ever share those kinds of things with our kids?
Yeah, Dr. Kathy, I think that's really helpful. It really kind of opens up space for those conversations to have and really for our kids to be curious about, other things, right? Curious about money, curious about relationships. But I also wonder about, creating space for them to fail. And we've often talked about this, having kids that have resiliency can work through those different things. And creating resiliency requires a lot of work because you have to give, attitude or time or attention to allow your kids to try things and to struggle through things. It's a lot easier just to make things, smooth for them. But I think when it comes to money, it's really even harder to have our kids have financial resiliency.
Mm.
There's countless millionaires who had the opportunity to go through being broke at one point of their life. And yet we know that finances really end up driving some of the most incredible stresses and severs in relationships that we've ever seen. How should we talk to our kids about failing financially, where we can, drive them to a bigger vision of their future that doesn't necessarily need to be tied to finances, that if all the financial, gou- gou- groundwork is kind of broken apart, that they don't question their identity.
Yeah.
Can we talk to them or give them space to fail financially? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I do agree that talking about recovering from financial mistakes or failure is certainly important. I love teaching kids that Walt Disney went bankrupt. It was either 3 or 4 times before he built Disneyland. And he didn't give up, and he surrounded himself with real wisdom. Another thing that I enjoy telling kids is that a lot of people with a lot of money have a lot of money because they steward it really well and they're stingy. The rumor is that if you have a lot of money, you spend a lot of money, and that is not a wise way to go. So what if we read biographies and autobiographies? And what if we had friends who are willing to tell stories, and maybe grandparents who are willing to tell stories? I think that is a way to really teach children. They can also learn from maybe even fiction books about the role of money. I think we need to talk about it more and mistakes. And here's the thing. I teach in the resiliency book that sometimes you have to allow your children to make mistakes so that they can learn the power of recovery and the power of victory after the fact. So what if you have a child who has saved up some money and wants to buy a particular pair of shoes, and you know that if he spends all of his money on those shoes, he will not have money to buy his brother a birthday gift next week, and he'll be embarrassed or shamed or saddened by that, or that he has another goal and he won't be able to meet it, but I want these shoes. Maybe you let him buy the shoes. And then you walk with him through the disappointment. You say, what could you have done differently? Oh, Dad, I could have listened to you or should have listened to you and, waited for the shoes, because actually now that I wear them, they're not all that cool. That's another thing to teach kids. It's the wanting that is more powerful than the actual getting, right? How many of us have wanted something and within a week of having it, it's not all that cool? All of us have had that experience, whether it's the shirt you want or the new eyeglasses or the new shoes. They look better in that catalog or on that website than they actually do on your feet. Maybe we got to talk about that more.
Yeah, I do think we need to talk about it more. We need to, ask some of those big questions, which kind of leads me to this last question that I have is it really helpful? I think we've talked about it. We've seen it in the data that having teens in the workforce is really good or beneficial for them. But is it wise for us when we look at that to really drive or encourage our kids to have summer jobs or in-school jobs? Is that helpful for them? Or is there a different way that we need to look at the world now, that just things are different and we should give our kids space to, pursue academia or, pursue their identity formation or different things like that? What do you think there, Dr. Kathy?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and there's no easy answer because it really does depend upon the child. I will say, first of all, related back to financial literacy, I wish that more high schools taught financial literacy. I wish more parents taught financial literacy. I wish more parents, when giving 7-year-olds an allowance, if that's your policy, or a 10-year-old an allowance, that you taught the saving, the tithing, the offering, and you had the envelope system or whatever system you want to develop so that they begin to understand that money does not grow on trees and it doesn't go as far as it once did. I think that the job, so there's more reasons to have a job than just helping them understand budgeting. There are children who will never learn respect for others, other-centeredness, and obedience from their parents. That's just a sad reality, that they have a reason to disrespect a dad for maybe mistakes the dad has made that he hasn't apologized for. But that kid gets a job and ends up being a great employee. It's kind of like the kid who's, disobedient and won't help out at home, but when going to a neighbor will clean the kitchen without being asked. And the parents are like, what did you do that for? Well, it's so frustrating. I can only imagine how frustrating that is. So if a child is good at time management, if a child has free time, a lot of us do better with less free time. So know your kids, and maybe one 16-year-old is ready for a job. And when your next kid turns 16, he's not. Because again, we believe in character age, not just a chronological age when making these decisions. And the other thing that to consider, Wayne, and you and Nancy have done this really well, what kind of job is a good fit for my child? Is customer service a good fit? Is hard labor a good fit? I think those are questions. And I'll end with this plea to the people listening, and that is that service without getting paid, it would trump it all. I would love for us to be raising our kids where they start to serve with their grandparents and their siblings and their parents in meaningful, vibrant ways according to their gifting. And they serve because serving is good. Serving honors the Lord. Serving puts God's best on display. Serving is a way of loving. I would prioritize service without getting paid, a higher priority than a job where they earn money.
You know, as Dr. Kathy was talking, I was reminded of a passage that comes out of actually Genesis 1, and I'm going to begin reading at verse 19. Now the Lord God had formed out of the ground all the wild animals and all the birds of the sky, and he brought them to the man to see what he would name them. Whatever he called each living creature, that was its name. So the man gave names to all the livestock and the birds and the sky and the wild animals. I love this mental picture of all these animals that God has created coming before Adam. And really, it's an opportunity now for Adam to take notice of them, to understand them, to study them. Also to ask some maybe bigger questions. And this is a little bit of my interpretation of this, but what are these animals for? What are their structures? What are the ways that they operate and live in the world? What are the design elements that are really unique and we should maybe call out in their name, and in some ways maybe call them blessed because they are operating in that way and they have a unique place in God's kingdom. Elsewhere in Scripture, we also see that God gives man this responsibility to till the earth, to really take control of it, to make it something great, to subdue it and order it and organize it. You know, I think that when we look at different things within work, you know, as Dr. Kathy kind of closed here, to ask our kids if they could maybe volunteer or, you know, step into some different areas where they could use their skills, maybe not for financial benefit, but for cultural benefit or societal benefit. I wonder if we did that, taught them that their responsibility is not just to make money in their job, but actually to take control of it, to subdue it, to be responsible with what they've been given so that it actually flourishes better than it was before they arrived there. I think teaching our kids some of those habits actually can help them when they enter the job force, because then they're not just looking at it from their own standpoint, they're actually looking at it from God's standpoint, and God places them and takes care of them in different settings. I think teaching them that will make them, you know, more productive citizens inside of their work environment. Also will make them great husbands, wives, and people that are in the church. Doing that can be a bright light that will shine and cut through some darkness or confusion they might be facing. You know, I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Celebrate Kids podcast, the daily episode Facing the Dark. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, my name is Wayne Stender. So thankful you joined us this week, and we're looking forward to seeing you here again on Monday.